Hi everyone. Welcome to part 2 of my Trump Crimes in Plain Sight series. I may veer off this topic for my next few videos, but I'm pretty sure I will be back at a later date. In my last video, I presented some publicly available evidence that suggested Trump and some of his family members may have participated in collusion, or the legal term, a conspiracy, with the Trump Tower meeting that occurred in the summer of 2016. In this video, I will present evidence based on publicly available reports that Trump obstructed justice. This is a very serious offense that Presidents Nixon and Clinton both had to contend with. Most of the evidence I will present comes from a really well laid out report titled Presidential Obstruction of Justice, The Case of Donald J. Trump from the Brookings Institution. The authors are Barry Burke, Noah Bookbinder, and Norman Eisen. The Brookings Institution is a nonprofit public policy think tank based in Washington, D.C. It's been described by The Economist as perhaps America's most prestigious think tank. In addition, the University of Pennsylvania's Global Go-To Think Tank Index report has named the Brookings Institution Think Tank of the Year every year since 2008. The Quarterly Journal of Economics found that Brookings was cited by conservative politicians almost as frequently as their liberal counterparts. The same study found Brookings to be the most cited think tank by US media and politicians. So, to say the least, this source is highly respected. Okay, so now on to obstruction of justice. From Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute, quote, obstruction of justice is defined in the Omnibus Clause of 18 U.S. Code Section 1503, close quote, and states that, quote, whoever, corruptly or by threats of force or by any threatening letter or communication, influences, obstructs, or impedes, or endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due administration of justice shall be guilty of an offense. Essentially, a person is obstructing justice whenever they have a specific intent to interfere in the process of doling out a punishment for potential crimes. According to the Brookings report, in addition to Section 1503, Sections 1505 and 1512C may be relevant when discussing Trump's and others' obstructive behaviors. All three sections talk about obstruction and vary in slight ways, which I won't get into too much here. However, really quickly, they mainly diverge in which types of proceedings people can be charged for interfering with. For example, congressional inquiries versus grand jury proceedings, say. In terms of criminal intent, they all use the word corruptly. Corrupt intent is basically any attempt which is intended to shield oneself or one's family or associates from administration of justice. Also relevant is 1512 Clause B, which criminalizes attempts to threaten, intimidate, and corruptly persuade witnesses. A lot of the actions Trump has taken, which fit the three sections I just mentioned, are also relevant in terms of this clause. And as a bonus, we see Title 18 U.S. Code Section 371 reappear, which was covered in my last video, that criminalizes conspiracies to commit crimes. If two or more parties conspire to obstruct justice, they can be penalized under this statute as well. However, I will be focusing my attention on the statutes I mentioned just a few moments ago for this video. First, let's start with James Comey, the former director of the FBI. He was overseeing his bureau's inquiry into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election since the summer of 2016. Of course, the public would subsequently find out that the Russians had Trump as their preferred candidate, and there were investigations going on probing ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. Hence, Comey was an important figure in the investigation of Trump and his family. On January 27, 2017, according to Comey's testimony, Trump invited Comey to dine with him at the White House. What was highly unusual, and Comey found this upon arrival, was that they would be dining alone, just the two of them. It was highly peculiar because presidents don't usually spend much time alone with FBI directors due to the risk of it looking like the president and the Department of Justice are getting a little bit too comfortable with one another. According to then Director Comey, Trump repeatedly asked for loyalty from Comey at that dinner. At the dinner table, Trump asked if Comey wanted to stay in his job or if he in fact liked his job. He then later spoke of how many people desired to hold the position that Comey had. Months later, Trump emphasized his own loyalty to Comey, and he said, quote, "We had that thing, you know," closed quote, presumably the fact that Trump let Comey stay in his job and that he should return the favor of loyalty by helping out with the Russia investigation. Then, on February 24, 2017, Trump cleared the room so it was just him and Comey. Trump, according to Comey's sworn testimony before Congress, said, quote, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." Flynn being former national security advisor for Trump. Many Trump defenders claim that his use of the word hope meant that he was not explicitly ordering Comey to drop an investigation into potential wrongdoings by one of his associates. However, relevant case law, such as U.S. versus Bedoy, shows that the use of the word hope in a context similar to this situation does not provide protection for defendants arguing that they did not obstruct justice. This is especially true when taking into consideration Trump's position as president and boss of Comey. The Brookings report even mentions that, quote, "When a high-ranking military official conveys his wishes to a subordinate, they are construed as orders." Finally, on March 30, 2017, Trump called Comey and described the Russia investigation as a cloud lingering over his head. He then asked Comey to help lift the cloud. Then, in May of 2017, Trump admitted to Lester Holt on live television that regardless of recommendations from people around him, that the Russia thing was on Trump's mind when he made the decision to fire Comey. This was the most public, brazen comment Trump made on the topic. And in my opinion, if a Democrat president had made this statement and Republicans held majorities, they would impeach on the spot. It's that simple. Initially, this video was going to be the main focus of my video. But after doing more research on the statutes and what constitutes obstruction in the legal sense, I decided to dig much further. Yet, on its face, Trump essentially admitted to obstruction on live TV in front of a national audience. Now on to a separate point of emphasis, Trump's interactions with his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. As AG, Sessions is the top law enforcement officer in the country. He heads the Department of Justice, an agency that has the FBI under its umbrella. Since Sessions had a prominent role on Trump's 2016 campaign, he decided to, rightfully so, recuse himself on any and all matters relating to the Russia investigation. In his place, Deputy Attorney General and number 2 at the Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, took his place as overseer of the Russia inquiry. After Director Comey was fired, Rosenstein was the man who appointed Robert Mueller as special counsel. In March 2017, Trump instructed White House counsel Don McGahn to stop Sessions from recusing himself from the investigation, according to Schmidt from the New York Times. Then, also during March of 2017, after Sessions made the decision to recuse himself, the New York Times reported that Trump berated Sessions for his decision and tried to get him to undo his recusal during a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. A couple of months later, in May of 2017, following Comey's testimony to Congress, the New York Times reported that Trump unloaded on Sessions and questioned his loyalty. The Times also claimed that Trump, quote, "repeated the refrain that attorneys general for Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Obama had protected the White House," close quote. It appears Trump wanted to be personally protected by Mr. Sessions. Also in May 2017, after Robert Mueller was appointed as special counsel, Trump berated Sessions yet again, telling him to resign. Sessions offered his resignation letter, which Trump reportedly rejected, according to Schmidt at the New York Times. Then, in July 2017, Vanity Fair reported that Trump instructed then Chief of Staff Reince Priebus to get Sessions' resignation. Trump reportedly told Priebus, quote, "Don't give me any BS. Don't try to slow me down like you always do. Get the resignation of Jeff Sessions." And finally, in January 2018, NBC News came out with an article saying Trump was reportedly talking to friends about possibly asking Sessions to consider prosecuting Mueller and his team. Clearly, Trump was and continues to remain frustrated with his attorney general. Since Sessions recused himself and Rosenstein took charge of overseeing the Russia probe and ultimately appointed a special counsel, this really showcases corrupt intent by Trump. He wanted someone loyal to him, as he presumably thought Sessions had been up until that point, to stay in charge of an investigation that could put him and his family in legal jeopardy. Finally, if NBC News reporting is true, he asked Sessions, without merit I might add, to prosecute the man attempting to prosecute him in Robert Mueller. The Brookings report then turns from Clause C to Clause B of Section 1512, which criminalizes threats, intimidation, corrupt persuasion, and misleading conduct intended to, quote, influence, delay, or prevent the testimony of any person in an official proceeding, cause or induce any person to withhold testimony or be absent from an official proceeding, or hinder, delay, or prevent the communication to a law enforcement officer or judge of the U.S. information relating to the commission or possible commission of a federal offense. The report goes on to say, quote, many indicators of attempts to impede, influence, or obstruct, such as a person's position of power, requests for loyalty, one-on-one closed-door conversations, implied employment threats, and retaliatory exercises of executive power against potential witnesses are also indicators of attempts to threaten, intimidate, or corruptly persuade, close quote. Alone, a person's position of power may not mean much, but when paired with the other elements, these can be impactful indicators. The report also points out the courts have routinely held that suggestive threats, intimidation, or persuasive statements are sufficient to bring a case under 1512b. Many of the offenses listed before also apply here, such as the loyalty dinner with Comey, Trump hoping Comey could let Flynn go, etc., etc. In addition, though, there are several other cases that fit under this clause of Section 1512. The following are some examples. Trump tweeting, quote, James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Then, after firing Comey, Andrew McCabe briefly was overseeing the Russia probe as acting FBI director. Trump had McCabe into his office and questioned McCabe's political loyalties and asked him who he voted for in the 2016 election. Then there's the issue of dangling pardons. Trump made a subtle suggestion that he may possibly consider pardoning Michael Flynn, saying, I don't want to talk about pardons for Michael Flynn yet. We'll see what happens. This is from CNN. In addition, Trump's personal attorney, John Dowd, per the Washington Post, telling lawyers for both Flynn and Manafort that Trump was considering pardons for both men in the summer of 2017. Also, Trump advisor and personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, suggested that things might get, quote, cleaned up by pardons in terms of people being investigated by Mueller. This is from the New York Daily News. Often in cases like these, where there may not be one piece of slam dunk evidence or a smoking gun, a corrupt pattern of successive actions can be just as useful to prosecution. We clearly see this in multiple threads covered here with Comey, Sessions, and McCabe, among many others not covered here in this video, such as Trump's reported attempts to fire Robert Mueller himself. In summation, Brookings concludes it is likely Trump obstructed justice, and I would say I agree. This is without access to loads of information the special counsel's team has, which has not yet been released to the public. With that in mind, the likelihood of criminal acts involving obstruction of justice get even higher. Thanks for tuning in. There will most likely be more videos to come in the Trump in Plain Sight series, but join me next time as I take on Fox News and what I view as a blatant propaganda machine that network houses. Please follow me at Jason B. Politics for more opinion and analysis, and I hope to see you all back here soon.